news in Harry and Meghan world, their show has been canceled. Season 3 of With Love, Meghan has been canceled by Netflix.
Let's just put a smile on our faces at 9:30 because the one piece of good news that's come out of a miserable day is that Meghan Markle's been cancelled by Netflix. Good morning.
Series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from.
In Meghan's case, it seems to me she's absolutely determined to force feed the narrative. And damn it, they're going to accept it and keep going. And people are just too smart.
He holds on to these terrible, unhappy moments with Meghan, who he says, she's absolute misery. But, that's not true either. And she wasn't around in the late 1990s. I mean, it's a sort of extraordinary way of behaving.
He wanted half in, half out. He wanted his own cake and eat it. And the royal family said, no, you're either in the royal family or not in the royal family.
Something serious just unfolded, and it's shaking up the whole Meghan Markle situation in a way people didn't expect at all. Right when things already looked tense, Tom Bower stepped in with claims that hit even harder, while Prince Harry was reportedly going through a very emotional moment inside a London courtroom.
Devastating moment for Prince Harry's reputation and credibility, as he argues with a judge while in the dock, contradicts himself, appears to fib about using the pseudonym Mr. Mischief.
Almost like Harry 2.0 is Brooklyn Beckham. Have you seen any of this action where...
Yes, I'm into it.
I'm so very into it because he doesn't talk to his father, fall out with the father.
I don't think I think, however, that if he did a program about his mother, that would be for money.
Yes.
And I think it would be a shocking act of further disloyalty.
At the same time, Netflix quietly backed away from Meghan's cooking project, and the timing has people raising eyebrows.
So Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's deal with Netflix, they just announced this morning, it has come to an end as we know it. This $100 million deal is boom, kaput, done, okay? Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's deal with Netflix is done because they couldn't bring home the bacon, okay? I think the folks at Netflix thought they're huge stars. Everyone's gonna wanna hear from them. That little show, With Love, Meghan, or whatever the hell it's called, as we told you in the last episode of Spot On, I think it was number 380 something, 350 something on the charts. Anything that low is not good, okay? If you're calling yourself a duchess, if you're calling yourself royalty, and we're using the term royalty loosely, okay, Meghan Markle, you should at least be in the top 100. I didn't even know there are that many shows on Netflix, that many films, that many productions. How could you be that low?
This isn't just about a show underperforming like people first assumed. The way everything is lining up, it's starting to look like there were deeper issues behind the scenes that never made it to the public. And once you really break it all down, it raises serious questions about where Meghan's Hollywood path is actually heading right now.
I've got to be really honest, though. I was joking. I completely agree with you. And I'm going to read how stuck up and deranged this woman is. Meghan Markle has decided to cut ties with Netflix. No, you got fired. And this is her reason. After fearing that her jam brand was being held back by the channel. Imagine creating jam and going, oh, one of the biggest streamers in the world, Netflix, you're holding back my raspberry conserve. You really are, you horrible people. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's being described here, this brand severance, these two parting ways as the kiss of death. Saying, like, one expert here was talking about how it's just that nobody's going to trust working with her anymore because it's not just Netflix, it's Spotify. They referred to it as repeated breakdowns and how it leaves a repulsive scent in Hollywood. She carries a scent of high maintenance, disappointment, and that is a rat poison when executives are already gun shy, he said. So
here's where things start getting intense. Tom Bower, the author of Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, gave an interview where he didn't hold back at all. He openly said, it turns out she's not any kind of talent, and that one line alone sparked a huge reaction across different platforms.
What Meghan never really understood, probably not even now, is that when she was cheered as a working royal, it wasn't because she was Meghan Markle, it was because she represented British royalty and all the values of the Queen and all the tradition. And
now that's not something people just brush off, especially coming from someone who has spent years researching this exact topic. And what makes it hit even harder is that he's presenting this as a conclusion based on long-term investigation, not just a random opinion.
She was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to, firstly, be seen with Harry, and secondly, didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap and give it gratis. And this year, she is desperate to be seen.
Well, absolutely, but don't even believe that there were 5 options. What you really saw were Harry's and Meghan's fantasy narrative, which they call the truth.
He's basically saying the issue goes deeper than one show not connecting with viewers. According to what's being discussed, Tom Bauer spent years gathering information, speaking with dozens of people who either worked with Meghan, crossed paths with her, or saw how things operated behind closed doors. So from his perspective, this is built on patterns, not isolated moments. That's why when he speaks like this, people start paying attention, even if they don't fully agree.
The thing about Meghan, she's a very, very deceitful person.
They've created, and they're going to earn a fortune out of it. And don't forget, there's Harry's book still to come next month. And then at some stage, there'll be Meghan's book. I mean, they're making a career out of this stuff.
And at the same time, there's a growing conversation where people are questioning whether this situation was predictable from the start. Like, was this something that could have been seen coming based on how everything was set up from day one? Now, here's where things really start to shift. Reports suggest that Netflix may have started having doubts about that massive deal with Meghan and Harry much earlier than anyone realized. We're talking within the first stretch of the partnership, not years later. And if that's true, then it changes the whole narrative people had about this deal being solid from the beginning. The show, reportedly titled With Love Meghan, was meant to reposition her as a lifestyle figure, putting her in the same lane as Martha Stewart and Ina Garten.
The show's been canceled. You're not going to be the next Martha Stewart, Meghan. I mean, the fact that Meghan Markle had a cooking show and she moved pretzels from one bag into another was crazy.
That's a space where authenticity matters a lot, and audiences are extremely quick to judge what feels genuine and what doesn't. And that leads into the bigger point people are now debating. It's not just about whether the show was good or bad. The real question being raised is whether the overall image matched what viewers were expecting. Because in today's space, people can instantly pick up on anything that feels forced or overly polished. And from this angle, some are saying that disconnect might have played a major role in how everything turned out. Instead of building a strong connection, it may have created distance, and once that happens, it's hard to pull audiences back in. The image Meghan Markle was trying to build looked perfect on the surface, but the cracks started showing once people looked closer. She was aiming to come across as warm, relatable, someone who enjoys cooking, hosting, and creating that cozy home vibe. But according to Tom Bauer, that image didn't fully match what was happening behind the scenes. One detail that really got people talking was the situation involving her father, Thomas Markle. During the same period she was filming her show, he reportedly went through a serious health situation involving a leg amputation. And what's being said is that there was no visit, no public sign of support, not even a call. Now that's the kind of thing that instantly makes people question the message being presented on screen. Because when someone is promoting themes like family, comfort, and connection, people expect to see that reflected in real life too. That contrast is exactly what Tom Bauer pointed out, and it's a big reason why some critics are calling the situation inconsistent.
The more Meghan must have been convinced of her importance to the monarchy. Do you still think she's that delusional? And maybe the answer is watching her at Kevin Costner's 805 Live event in $300,000 worth of jewelry, including Diana's Cartier watch.
Wherever she is, whether it's at Costner or in Colombia or in Nigeria or wherever, she's always, her publicist will reveal that she's wearing one of Diana's pieces of jewelry.
The authenticity is really what the issue is, and there's, they just hired a whole new PR firm.
In the end, one of Meghan's many deficiencies is she has nothing to say. Mm-hmm. There's no originality. There's no profundity.
Now let's get into the performance of the show itself, because this is where things really start to stand out. The series, reportedly titled With Love, Meghan didn't just underperform, it barely made an impact at all. According to the numbers being discussed, it ranked around 1,217th on Netflix during the second half of 2025. That's not just low, that's almost completely off the radar. And the total views, around 2 million over a 4-month period. To put that into perspective, there are smaller online creators pulling in similar or even higher numbers without global recognition or major backing. So when you look at someone like Meghan Markle, who had worldwide attention and a massive deal behind her, those numbers start raising serious questions. Even when a holiday-themed special came out, which usually gives content a boost, the results didn't change much. It reportedly reached about 2.4 million views and ranked even lower, somewhere around 1,500th. That's a tough position for someone who was expected to bring major attention to the platform.
Well, let us celebrate. Meghan Markle humiliated, and we all know about cancellation if you call Jeremy Kyle or Rupert Bell. Netflix show cancelled after dismal viewing figures. That's a shock because it was so entertaining, wasn't it, Rupert?
It was, I don't know how many episodes I watched, but my life, it nearly drove me to my grave, I think. It was desperate. It really had nothing to commend it as far as I am concerned.
No.
Yes, she, and they now obviously no longer has a deal with Netflix. It's a sort of first look arrangement, which is, as you know, is one of those sort of, well, yes, we'll have a look at your idea, and if we like it, at least gives us first dibs, but their ideas haven't exactly set the world on fire. So I have to say it's no surprise. What we think we will get is bite-sized little Instagram videos of her cooking.
Oh, great. We'll look forward to that. Yeah, that'd be great.
And this is where Tom Bauer added more context that made people stop and think. From his perspective, Netflix wasn't just focused on a cooking show. They were likely hoping for bigger opportunities down the line. Things like deeper insights into royal life, major documentaries, or exclusive personal stories that could draw massive audiences. But instead, what they ended up with, according to this viewpoint, was content that didn't create strong reactions. Simple visuals, calm setups, and moments that didn't stick with viewers the way high-impact content usually does. And that's where the bigger criticism starts coming in. Tom Bauer claims that the issue wasn't resources because everything was provided. There were experienced producers involved, a strong budget, and full creative control given. The setup was there for success, at least on paper. The real debate now is about presence and connection. From this angle, it's being said that everything came across as too controlled, too planned, and lacking that natural energy audiences tend to connect with. Not spontaneous enough, not engaging enough, and that made it harder for viewers to stay interested.
This is all a bunch of buffoonery, tomfoolery, and malarkey and spin to say that they're not bringing home the bacon. Because let me just tell you, if they were bringing in the views and the money for Netflix, that cash would have been there. Netflix would have been making it rain on Meghan Markle, okay? But she's not bringing home the bacon, and the show sucks, and nobody wants to see her traipse around a kitchen with her scrawny legs, selling dog biscuits and jams and jellies and whatever the hell she does, okay? Nobody wants to watch it anymore. And Meghan Markle, she conned the folks at Netflix into thinking she was like the next Martha Stewart, and then she was trying to make like candles from Etsy or something. She was basically a girl who had a Pinterest board and thought she needed a lifestyle show, and it didn't work out for her. So Meghan Markle, you got your ass handed to you.
And when a show struggles to hold attention, especially with that level of backing, it quickly becomes a bigger conversation than just ratings. Now, this is where things take an even sharper turn, because the way Tom Bauer breaks it down goes way beyond just one show not doing well. He suggests that the real issue might be deeper, tied to how Meghan connects with people overall. According to his perspective, the biggest gap is that the connection just doesn't feel natural to audiences. And in today's world, where viewers pick up on every little detail, that kind of disconnect stands out instantly. He pointed out that the most successful lifestyle personalities all share one key trait, and that's authenticity. Without that, it becomes really hard to build trust with viewers no matter how big the platform is. When you look at names like Martha Stewart, she built her brand from the ground up with a clear identity and consistency. Even Gwyneth Paltrow, who gets called out sometimes for being out of touch, still comes across as genuinely herself in her content. But according to Tom Bauer, Meghan's situation feels different. The claim being made is that instead of showing a natural version of herself, it comes across like she's stepping into a role.
Can't ignore them if they keep popping up doing stuff like this. That's the thing. We're kind of in a mutually abusive, toxic relationship, aren't we? The media and Harry and Meghan, because they keep doing stuff wanting attention. Then they get quite adverse reaction most of the time. Then they react really badly to the reaction. And so it goes on.
Well, what it really boils down to is the threat they offer. If the threat was punctured, which I hope my book will do.
Doing anymore, which I'm not shocked because nobody was watching it, okay? That show is like number 5,206 on the Netflix chart. You guys, they put so much money into the show and then no one tuned in to watch it that it was just not a good return on investment.
And that's where modern audiences start to lose interest because people today are quick to sense when something feels staged. There were also claims from people involved in the production that added more fuel to the conversation. From what's being said, working on the show wasn't exactly smooth. There are mentions that scenes had to be repeated multiple times, not because of the content itself, but because of how things looked on camera. The focus reportedly leaned heavily on appearance, angles, and presentation, and while visuals matter, the bigger concern being raised is that the actual substance of the show may not have been getting the same level of attention. That kind of imbalance can affect how everything comes across to viewers. One example that stood out in this discussion involved something as simple as cooking presentation.
And even the publishers couldn't quite believe some of the things which I discovered. And one of the big things at that time was sensitivity reading. There was a great fear that she would play the race that professionally they've gone down dramatically. And I predicted it in the book, but even I would not have thought it would be that accelerated. I think personally, they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of in the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
According to Tom Bauer, there was a strong emphasis on maintaining a polished image at all times, even during moments that are usually more casual and practical. In real kitchen settings, people tie their hair back, move quickly, and focus on the process. But here, the priority seemed to be on keeping everything looking picture perfect. And while that might work for photos, it can feel out of place in a format that's supposed to feel natural and relatable. That contrast is exactly what some critics believe made the show harder for audiences to connect with. And it didn't stop there. The overall setup of the show also became part of the conversation. From the filming locations to certain background elements, there were claims that parts of it didn't fully reflect real life. When viewers start noticing those details, it can break the sense of authenticity pretty quickly. And once that happens, it becomes difficult to keep people invested no matter how big the name attached to the project is. What adds another layer to all of this is how things were unfolding at the same time for Prince Harry. While the show discussions were gaining attention, he was in London dealing with a legal case involving Daily Mail over past media practices.
Harry is behaving disgracefully. Not only is he utterly disloyal to his father and to his brother, but also to his mother's memory.
Tell us that you were aware of some, but not all, of the 14 articles that you complain of in these proceedings at the time they were published.
Yes.
You did not complain, and no complaint was made on your behalf.
Not that I am aware of.
That is because you believed at the time that the articles were published, insofar as you saw them, that the information they contained came from legitimate sources.
To a certain extent, but I would not have been able to complain about them anyway because of the institution I was in. It would have been very difficult. Never complain and never
During those proceedings, there were moments where tensions reportedly rose, with exchanges becoming more heated than expected. At one point, the judge had to step in and guide the situation back on track, asking for direct answers instead of back-and-forth responses. That kind of moment naturally drew attention, especially given the setting and the level of the court involved. When you put everything together, the timing of these events makes the whole situation feel even more intense. On one side, there's growing criticism about the show and how it was received. On the other, there's a high-profile court situation unfolding in real time. And with voices like Tom Bauer adding strong opinions into the mix, it keeps the spotlight firmly on both Meghan and Harry in a way that's hard to ignore. Things inside that courtroom didn't stay calm for long, and what unfolded started getting people talking in a big way. During the hearing, the judge reportedly had to step in and remind Prince Harry to stay focused, saying something along the lines of, "You're doing what lots of litigants do, you tend to argue back. You don't have to carry the burden of arguing the case today." That's not something you usually hear directed at someone in that position, especially in a high-level court setting, but even with that warning, the situation didn't fully settle down. There were moments where tension stayed high and the exchange didn't come across as smooth or controlled. That alone caught attention because people expect a certain level of composure in that environment. Then things took an even more emotional turn. In the middle of giving testimony, Harry's voice reportedly started breaking and he became visibly emotional.
Match with him. At one point, Judge Nicklin had to step in and say, "I'm so sorry, Duke, but it's the job of your counsel to defend you and to get into arguments with the opposing side, not yourself."
Prince Harry is apparently crying on the stand and saying this. This is a direct quote we have from the New York Post. "They've made my wife's life an absolute misery."
Here and go through this again, and to hear them claim in their defense that I don't have any right to privacy is disgusting. They have made my wife's life an absolute misery.
At one point he said, "They have made my wife's life an absolute misery," which instantly shifted the tone of the moment. Now here's where people started questioning things. The legal case itself, involving Daily Mail, is focused on events that happened years before Meghan Markle was even part of his life. So naturally, people began asking why her situation was being brought into this specific discussion. That disconnect didn't go unnoticed, and it became a major talking point afterward. This ties directly into what Tom Bauer has been saying for a while now. From his perspective, there's a pattern where Meghan becomes central in situations that originally had nothing to do with her. He suggests that Harry's focus often shifts back to her, even when the context doesn't require it. Now that's his interpretation, but it's one that's clearly gaining attention. And what added even more fuel to the conversation is the fact that Meghan wasn't physically present during the hearing. While Harry was in London dealing with this intense moment, she was reportedly back in California. That distance became part of the narrative, with people pointing out how different their situations looked at that exact time. At the same time, another layer of criticism started building around the bigger picture. Harry spoke about the impact of media exposure on his private life, which is a serious topic on its own. But critics quickly brought up past decisions that seemed to go in the opposite direction. For example, his memoir Spare shared deeply personal stories, including private family moments and experiences that hadn't been public before. That's where people began calling out what they see as mixed messaging. On one side, there's concern about privacy, and on the other, there are very detailed public disclosures. And this is exactly the point Tom Bauer keeps circling back to. He argues that you can't fully control how your story is handled once you've chosen to share so much of it on major platforms like Netflix or in best-selling books. That balance between public and private becomes harder to manage, and once that line blurs, it opens the door for criticism. Whether people agree with that or not, it's clearly shaping how the situation is being viewed right now. And the reactions? They've been intense. A lot of people online aren't holding back, questioning the consistency between what's being said and what's been done in the past. Some are pointing out that if privacy was the main goal, certain choices might have looked very different. Others are focusing on the courtroom moment itself, saying that emotional responses don't always match the legal focus of a case. Either way, the conversation has definitely shifted, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. The reaction to everything that's been happening lately has been intense, and in some cases, surprisingly blunt. A lot of people online aren't just criticizing the situation, they're actually celebrating how things have turned out. You've got comments floating around like, "She's made our lives a misery," listening to her behavior and hypocrisy, and others saying things like, Finally, Netflix found its spine. Now, whether people agree with those takes or not, it shows a clear shift in how the public is responding. The tone isn't curiosity anymore, it's frustration mixed with disengagement. And that shift is exactly what Tom Bauer claimed would eventually happen.
Harry's evidence came forward a day. So Harry originally wasn't meant to be giving evidence until tomorrow. Now, I think it scrambled him a bit. He seemed uneasy from the moment he arrived. He didn't really settle properly in the witness box, and he came in, and Anthony White very cleverly immediately got him onto this thing of being part of the institution plane. And right from the off, Harry was on the defensive and very bristly and very abrasive. And the judge intervened 3 times to try and calm him down. I mean, the first time, which was the one that you showed there, he was actually quite sympathetic, and he was quite like, look.
According to Tom Bauer, there was always going to be a point where audiences stopped reacting emotionally and just tuned out completely. He argued that people would grow tired of what he describes as a repeated pattern of complaints and public grievances. And now, looking at how things are playing out, some believe that prediction is starting to match reality. The cancellation of the show, the courtroom attention around Prince Harry, and the overall drop in excitement around new projects all seem to point in the same direction. It's not even about strong dislike anymore, it's something quieter. People are simply losing interest, and that kind of reaction can be harder to recover from than outright criticism. One of the more striking points Tom Bauer made is that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And from this angle, that's where things appear to be heading. Instead of constant headlines driving huge engagement, there's a sense that fewer people are paying attention altogether. That kind of shift can impact everything, from media coverage to future opportunities. Because when the audience stops caring, even major platforms start rethinking their investment. And that leads directly into what some are now saying about Netflix quietly stepping back. There's growing speculation that the partnership might not continue much longer. The idea being discussed is that instead of making a dramatic announcement, the platform could slowly distance itself over time. Some have even described it as a slow phase-out, where fewer projects get approved and visibility gradually decreases. If that's accurate, it would explain why things have been feeling quieter instead of suddenly ending. It's a subtle shift, but one that can have long-term effects, and if fewer opportunities come through, it naturally raises questions about what comes next.
You want constant press, and you want to constantly be, a topic of conversation. And then you're upset that these papers write about you, or that they might go to some links that you find unsavory to obtain information, right? You can't have it both ways. Folks are so fame hungry, okay? And then when they get written about, they don't love the way they've been written about. It's like, okay, you guys can't make your mind.
Another angle that's being talked about involves finances, although this part is more speculative and based on commentary rather than confirmed details. There are claims suggesting that large investments went into projects that didn't deliver the expected results. With high production costs, property expenses, and a very public lifestyle, people are starting to question how sustainable everything is. Long term. Now, it's important to keep in mind that exact numbers aren't publicly confirmed, but the conversation itself is gaining traction. And when that kind of topic enters public discussion, it adds pressure regardless of the actual figures. There's also been talk about efforts to reset public image and reconnect with different circles. From revisiting past PR strategies to trying new creative ideas, it's being framed by some commentators as an attempt to regain momentum. According to Tom Bauer, this could be seen as a sign of urgency. The suggestion is that multiple approaches are being tested at once, hoping one of them resonates. But at the same time, critics argue that constantly shifting direction can make it harder to build a consistent identity. And then there's the legal situation involving Prince Harry, which continues to add another layer to everything. Some commentators believe the outcome could play a significant role in shaping what happens next. Legal cases can be unpredictable, and depending on how things unfold, there could be financial and reputational impacts. That uncertainty is keeping attention on the situation, even as overall public interest shifts. At the center of all of this is a bigger point that Tom Bauer has been repeating for a while. The transition from royal life to independent branding was always going to be challenging.
His mother had amazing status. She looked beautiful. She had terrific poise. She worked very hard at being a royal. She was very empathetic with a lot of sick people. None of the things that Meghan would ever dream of doing.
Building something from the ground up, especially under constant public attention, is very different from operating within an established system. And according to this perspective, that difference may have been underestimated. Now, everything happening, from media reactions to business decisions, is being viewed through that lens, making each development feel like part of a much larger story. So when you step back and look at everything, it really feels like the situation is shifting fast and people are watching closely to see what happens next. Between the media reactions, the business moves, and all the public moments, this story is far from over. If you've been following all this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And check out the next video on your screen right now for even more celebrity drama. See you in the next one.